Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a sweet wine from the Jerez region of Spain. So this is Ximenez Spinola's Muy Viejo Pedro Ximenez. And that's a sherry wine from a Solera laid down in 1918. The Ximenez Spinola Bodega is a long-established, family-owned company that these days produces high-quality both sherries and also brandies from the region. They're unusual in specialising. They only work with the Pedro Ximenez grape variety, and actually in the sherry region, Pedro Ximenez makes up only about 5% of the plantings. Most people use predominantly Palomino to make their wines. The family has a long history, started by Felepe Zarano Spinola, and the first records they have of trading wine date back to about 1729, so possibly the company was started slightly before that, but that's an approximate idea of when they started. And today the 9th generation of the same family still run the company. Pedro Ximenez, a classic Spanish variety whose origins are lost and somewhat confused actually. There's a well-touted theory that Peter Ximenez might have been one of the tercio alemanes soldiers that Emperor Carlos I, or Carlos V if you're German, brought with him from Germany when he came to be Emperor of Spain. And that's perhaps an idea that's reinforced by the idea that there's a well-known vineyard in the Jerez region called the Pago de los Tercios. And it seems that the genesis of Pedro Ximenez, the grape variety, comes from about this sort of time. So the idea would be that maybe this German soldier brought with him some cuttings from his homeland of either Riesling or Elbling, both varieties that were thought to be the genesis of Pedro Ximenez, and that had mutated in the beautiful southern Spanish sun and was now Pedro Ximenez. Unfortunately, more recently, genetic testing shows that the variety isn't actually related to either Riesling or Elbling or any other German varieties. It's in fact a descendant of an Arabic table grape called Gibi, so probably came with the Moorish conquest of southern Spain, and has mutated to produce Pedro Ximenez. But whatever, the wines make some incredibly sweet wines that are often used to sweeten sweet Oloroso sherries or something like that. In terms of production, how is this made? You start off with grapes that are of high ripeness anyway. They're hand-picked into 15 kilogram boxes so the fruit doesn't get damaged. The fruit is left in the sun, out in the open, to raisinate for 3 weeks. During that period, a ton of grapes will dry to an extent that you've got about 300 kilograms left in weight. So it'll shrivel, become raisins, and that concentrates sugars, it concentrates flavours, and also concentrates acidity in the resulting juice. So when you press these, you end up with, from 300 kilograms of grapes, of dried grapes, you end up with about 200 litres of must, which is intensely sweet, very difficult to ferment. It may ferment for a short period of time and then gets fortified. So the fact that there's not a lot of fermentation goes on leaves a wonderful freshness and a cleanliness. The resulting wine goes into old American oak casks and ages. As I say, this is Solera that was laid down in 1918, but it will actually take 15 years for new wine to pass through the Solera, so that's a minimum age for the wine in here. So that produces a wonderfully complex wine due to the oxidation process that goes on. These are released in limited amounts. For instance, although actually on our website we refer to this as a wine that is vintaged. Obviously it's not a vintage, it's created in a Solera and it's a blend of many vintages. However, you'll see there's a date on the bottom there, quite small to see on the video, that says that this was from a running of the scales, a drawing off of wine that happened in 2021, when they bottled just short of 5,000 bottles, 4,998 bottles were run off, and this is bottle 2,092. So it's a very small production of fabulously sweet wine. You've got here a wine evidently that's 350 grams per litre of sugar, which is fortified up to 15% alcohol. So looking at it, first thing to say, you've got a lovely depth of colour. There's a real nutty brown core there with a beautiful amber to tawny rim. It sticks to the glass. I mean, sometimes I struggle to see tears on the glass, but this is actually so viscous that it's very slow to form tears, because the sugar levels, the alcohol, it's all sticking to the glass there very happily. So let's have a look at the aroma, shall we? There's a wonderful treacly concentration there. There are notes of sultanas, fresher than raisin, so there are notes of candied peel. There's a slight sort of rancio sort of character to the whole thing. But really there's a very rich, ripe, warm, possibly from the alcohol, inviting aroma there. Really sort of very much that dried fruit, almost dried fruit cake sort of note. Anyway, so let's have a taste. Gosh, well, a really incredible sweetness dominates that. I mean, as I say, a note I've seen suggests that this is 350 grams per litre of sugar, which makes it much, much sweeter than most sweet wines. In fact, the only sweet wine style that's really going to be regularly sweeter than a Pedro Ximenez is a pure Azu from Tokai, which can get up to sort of 500-600 grams per litre of sugar. But this is incredibly sweet. There's not a massive fresh acidity. There's a slight amount of volatile acidity, and there is a beautiful fresh fruit, and there's a wonderful sort of sultana note, rounded, slight notes of sort of orange peel, sort of slightly developed oxidized rancio notes, but really it's much more the sort of the sultana-y freshness there that's lasting. I mean, this is a wine that's developed in the presence of oxygen, so I mean you can leave an open bottle for a very long time and it won't deteriorate. But it's this rich sultanas, perhaps figs, dried figs, those sort of notes, almost dried dates as well. It's a real intensity. You wouldn't want to drink too much of this, because this is very sort of syrupy sweet on the palate. I have heard of the idea of drizzling it over vanilla ice cream as a wonderful way of having a dessert, and that is quite a nice approach to using it. But it's certainly a wine you could drink at the end of a meal. We just finish that off with a sort of very rich treat for you there. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you find this interesting. Do join us again. Do feel free to follow us on YouTube, and do like and share the video. Bye for now.